Welcome on in to Drummer Mamas. A little birdie told me that you're 60 now, right?
That's a lie.
Are you 61 now?
I'm 61. My my brother Mike turns 60 tomorrow.
I mean, you
My
need to
younger brother.
you need to share this youth serum with us because it's just ridiculous. You look amazing. You're,
Oh, God.
insane.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a weird one because, there's a lot of that kind of youthful look within my family and quite a bit of longevity as well. If you were to meet my youngest sister, Tessa is 55 now. So she's born in 1970. So she's 55 now. And I swear, when you look at her, she looks like a student. I mean, she looks really young. So, I mean, I've been having a lot of compliments regarding the condition of my skin, but that's because I've been drinking lots of water because of my renal issues. So I have a minimum of 2 liters of water a day. So I can recommend that. That probably helps with the skin. And quite a while ago, I did a BBC session quite a few years ago for Young Jazz Musician of the Year. This was in 2020. And one of the staff there, she was surprised to learn my age, and she asked me what my secret was. And by then I had not long finished my chemo and radiotherapy, and I said, well, it's probably partly down to 6 months of chemotherapy, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I bet she didn't know what to
So,
say after that.
oh, the whole uh, the the whole room laughed. It was and it was a light chat.
For your 60th last
Mm,
year, you
yeah,
celebrated with a gig. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. That gosh, that was so nice. Just by chance, I was contacted by Pee Wee Ellis's wife and manager. Unfortunately, Pee Wee is no longer with us, but his wife Charlotte contacted me and asked me whether I would be interested in playing with Fred Wesley, who was part of the classic JB's lineup for James Brown in the 60s and such. And I had played with Fred before, but not with his actual band. And yes, so I took up the opportunity to do that. And just by chance, those dates, it was 3 nights at Ronnie Scott's, and they were on the 12th, 13th, and 14th. And my birthday's on the 12th. So I had the opportunity to celebrate my 60th birthday playing funk with one of the founders of that genre, and had a fantastic time. And the band was so welcoming and kind and accommodating and complimentary. And yeah, it was a fantastic long weekend.
Oh, it's such a
That's the
good way to
story.
have a birthday. The best way
Yeah,
to
right.
celebrate.
Yeah. And then the following year, for my 61st, I found myself playing with my old friend Julian Joseph. So it's been 2 birthdays in a row. But yeah, but the 60th was was rather special.
Did you say that your diagnosis was in 2017 or 2018?
2018.
Okay. Could
Yeah.
you tell us some career highlights that you had like pre 2018? What are kind of
Oh,
favorite albums or favorite artists that you've worked with?
as a musician, I've been extremely spoiled and extremely blessed. Um, I'm one of those people who to whom, if I were to name one musician, drummers tend to tend to be willing to sacrifice their left nut in order to stay in the same room as them, let alone be on stage and such. So yeah, I have quite a few highlights when I think about it. Obviously, one of the most recent ones for me was getting to play and tour with John McLaughlin. And I had known John for about 20 years or so, because the first time I actually recorded with him was in 1995. And I got to meet him through Trilok Gertu and then through Dennis Chambers and beforehand. So John had already become familiar with who I was. And then I got the phone call asking to record one track of an album of his. And then by chance, during that phone call, he says, on this track, I'm going to be playing with an old friend of mine. We haven't played together in 20 years. And so I arrive at the studio and I'm set up in the middle of this large space. And before I know it, I'm sat there behind the kit, and John McLaughlin's standing on my left side and Jeff Beck is standing on my right. And then that experience led to playing with Jeff Beck in 2000, doing a short UK tour with Jeff Beck. That was in 2004. That was with my brother Mike on bass and with Jan Hammer, Jan Hammer is one of my favorite musicians of all time, because he has the trifecta more than most musicians I can think of. And by that, I mean, his sense of melody is ridiculous, his harmony is incredible, and his rhythm is absolutely amazing. He has all three on a high level. And he's one of my favorite drummers as well, stylistically, and in terms of how he thinks melodically, and in terms of concept on the kit. So we did a short tour, including 2 dates at the Royal Albert Hall, one of which was on Jeff's 60th birthday, which, when I think about it now, that's 21 years ago. And he celebrated his 60th, and I'm 61 now, which is nuts. So that was great. And then I did a rock gig with Glenn Hughes, bass player for Deep Purple Mark 3 and 4. And that was the most fun I've ever had on the road before and since, because he's such a character and he had loads of rock and roll stories, and he's the loudest bass player on the planet. And that was real fun. So yeah, that's a handful of it's a little handful of experiences I've had. Yeah.
So would you be open to talking us through that time in 2018 when you got the cancer diagnosis, for those who might not know your story?
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, as I'm about to say this, I may as well mention that yesterday morning, well, I'm closely associated with a cancer charity called Maggie's, and Maggie's have cancer centres up and down the UK. But they're celebrating their 30-year anniversary this year, and I was contacted by them because we've kind of formed a bit of a symbiotic relationship as such. I've done a lot of media stuff for them, and I've shared my story, which they found has been really inspiring to other people. So anyway, yesterday morning was the launch of the National Cancer Strategy, the government's National Cancer Strategy, and I feel I ought to mention this. So we were there quite early in the morning at the Maggie Centre at the Royal Free Hospital, which was my first visit there. My regular centre is at Charing Cross Hospital in Hammersmith. And yes, so I went there, and we were myself and other people who've gone through the cancer experience were there to speak to the health secretary, Wes Streeting. And so we got to meet him, and he's a cancer survivor himself, having had kidney cancer. And so we had a nice chat, and then he did the speech to launch the strategy. And so I ended up surprising everybody in the room by asking whether I could say one more thing. And he said, "Yeah, sure, sure." And I said, "Well, could can you send my fondest regards to your dad?" And he was like, "What?" So I told him that his dad, Mark Streeting, his dad and I were classmates at Bow Boys Secondary School in the East End 45 years ago. And it's just so weird that his son has achieved so much, and he's now health secretary and whatever. And it's like I knew his dad.
That's
So
mad,
that's mad,
isn't
isn't
it?
it? Yeah, so that's a little segue to your question. Yeah, so so of course I had terrible ongoing symptoms, which looking back in hindsight, with the bowel obstruction, I had these symptoms going as far back as 2005, but they would flare up very occasionally, maybe once every few years, once every couple of years or so. And then as time went on, it became more frequent. And then around 2017, 2018, it got really bad. And then it got to the point that eventually I was referred to hospital, and they did the blood test, MRI scan, CT scan. After which I was called in, met my surgeon for the first time. She told me, "We need to fast track you into surgery first thing Monday morning." And so her personality, she's very blunt in how she says things, and kind of has a bit of a gallows sense of humor, which I found to be quite charming. And so basically she said I had to have this surgery. Then she invited me to come back to the hospital the following day, which was going to be the Friday, so she could show me the CT scan and explain the surgery that was needed. And so I said, "Oh, I can't make it tomorrow because I'm playing with Jocelyn Brown at the Hideaway, and we have a rehearsal sound check, And she goes, "Oh, right, okay then. I suppose we can postpone to tomorrow's appointment, and then you'll die. You'll die." And I was like, "I think I have a phone call to make." So I attended that Friday, and she showed me the CT scan, and it showed that, as well as the bowel obstruction, that was the slow burner. But then more recently, I developed a tumor which is growing outside of my intestines, and the tumor, well, it was about the size of a small melon or a grapefruit, maybe. And that was the thing that was causing a lot of discomfort as well and such. So I had 7.5 hours surgery on Monday. Oh, and she told me that that I needed to have a colostomy stoma. On initially hearing that, I wasn't happy about it, because I had seen documentaries with people who have a stoma, and it didn't look nice. And so I eventually initially was quite shocked about it, and then she said, "Look, you're in such a bad way. You have so much of a backup of waste in your system because of the bowel obstruction. When we open you up, it's going to be like Mount Vesuvius." So this is her, right? So she said, so we cannot immediately reconnect your bowel because you will get sepsis and you'll die like that. So the moment she explained it, something clicked in my head, and I was like, fine. And since then, I've lovingly referred to my stoma as magic stoma because it has saved my life, and it's given me a whole different perspective on everything. And so I had the surgery, and then by week 3 of the surgery, I was given my diagnosis because I was having blood tests every single morning, which for me is torture because my veins are very small and that they tend to hide, especially when I have blood tests. So after 2 weeks of blood tests, they were able to confirm this was a very aggressive, nasty form of cancer, and my diagnosis was bowel cancer stage 4. So they call it carcinoma of the sigmoid colon, stage 4. And so they got all of the mass out. But she said, in order to ensure that you'll be okay, we're going to put you through 6 months of chemotherapy and then have a little break. And then after that, 5 weeks of daily, Monday to Friday, daily radiotherapy focused on the pelvic region. Now, I have these stents in my kidneys that were installed during the surgery to protect my ureter. And it was deemed that it wasn't safe to remove them while I was having my cancer treatment. So they left them in there, and during the radiotherapy, they got zapped along with everything else, and it caused a form of sepsis, which reached my kidneys. And so since late 2019, I've been living with the diagnosis of chronic kidney disease, stage 3. So I'm cancer-free as of 2023, 5 years cancer-free, which is fantastic. However, I'm in and out of hospital for the past few years because my kidneys tend to like to play Russian roulette, and when they go wrong, it puts me in hospital for a good few weeks or so, and that in turn it's affected my working life as well. So I haven't been out on any kind of extensive tours because I have to be careful about where I am and mindful of my kidneys and all of that stuff. So that is as small a nutshell as I could.
No, that's
describe, because there are all kinds of complications. Like there was the likelihood that I would have had my left leg amputated because the tumor had attached itself to a major artery in my left leg, and my bladder as well. So I had I had a quarter of my bladder removed, and thankfully the rest of my bladder is cancer free. My lymph nodes were fine, which was amazing. And attached to an artery in my left leg, so they had to call in a specialist surgeon to remove the tumor from the artery, because had the artery been snipped, then I would have lost my left leg.
Oh my God.
How did you pick yourself up and remain so positive? I mean, especially as a drummer, right? And
my hi-hat leg.
Yeah. How have you dealt with that?
I took the situation moment by moment. I've always been quite a pragmatic person, and quite a stoic person. I come from a family of stoics. I initially, it wasn't until I got my official diagnosis that I told the rest of my family. Michael knew, and we agreed not to tell my sisters or my mum until we knew for sure that this was definitely what it was. And then once I told my sisters and my mum, their response was, "Oh, right, okay. So, what's next?" There were no histrionics, no crying, nothing like that. So I come from that kind of background. So when I was told I had to have the stoma, told about the surgery and told about this and that. I remember waking up from the surgery and as soon as I was conscious enough and remembered why I was there, I fell down to my abdomen and I felt the plastic bag there, and my response was, right, so, okay, this is me for the foreseeable future, and I just accepted the situation. I guess my attitude was not so much why me, but if not me, then who? You know, cancer, it's about cells misbehaving, and it can affect absolutely anyone. That they're saying now 1 in 2 people will get it at some point in their lives. And I've spent the past few years telling people that the thing about cancer is you don't need an application form. It's like, you know, you have the likes of Sir Chris Hoy, who is basically Superman, and he gets it, and it doesn't matter what your lifestyle is, who you are. Cancer is cancer. The cells will do what they will do. So I wasn't questioning why me. I wasn't questioning whether I'd done something wrong with blah blah. I just thought, well, I'm just one of those who has got the diagnosis. I just have to deal with it in the best way I can. I had no qualms about doing the chemotherapy. I was anxious in the lead up to it, having not experienced it. But then as soon as I experienced the first cycle, I was like, fine. You know, and I just went on with the following 6 months, and same with the radiation.
I wanted to just jump in and go rogue a little bit, Jim.
Yes.
Was there any sense of frustration when you later got diagnosed with the kidney condition? Because, I mean, it seems like through happenstance that you were told it was going to be okay, and then because of the radiation, if I'm correct, that it's affected them the way it has. Was there any lingering, like, anger, frustration? What did you know, you seem so zen, which is amazing.
I do. Of course, I am human. I do have feelings. I can't say that I felt any kind of resentment, because yet again, I'm pragmatic, and I'm quite logical about things. And so the way I thought about it, and the way I think about it, is that, well, you know, with anyone, well, for the most part, with anybody going through the cancer experience, nobody walks away from it 100% scot-free. You always walk away with your life changed irreparably for some reason or another, either for physical reasons or psychological reasons. And so for me, the way I see it is that, well, it was advisable to keep the stents in, and I don't hold any kind of anger or animosity towards anyone. It's just that it's just one of those things. The sequence, it was the timing and the sequence of events. And again, I tend to look at things on the positive rather than the negative. And if I'm going to focus on the timings, how everything was timed, I was extremely fortunate. I was extremely lucky, because they caught me 1 week before I would have died. And I had the surgery. They got that surgeon in. That saved my left leg. That's another thing. I could have died had they reconnected my bowel from sepsis. That's another thing. So there's all these reasons for having turned down one road, which would have been the worst outcome. But all these years later, coming up to 7.5 years later, I'm sat here, I feel healthy and vibrant, and I'm still here and enjoying life, and like really everything is all of the colors are more vibrant, and everything's in sharper focus, and I don't worry about trivial things anymore. It really puts everything in perspective. So no, I've never had those kinds of feelings. Although I do have moments of course, when I'm on my own, and especially when I get ill, when I'm in hospital and I'm ill, and you can feel sorry for yourself to some degree, but the trick is not to stay there. You're allowed to have these feelings, but to kind of wallow in it, yeah, that kind of thing, I wouldn't advise.
Can you tell us what impact that's had on your drumming and your career? Because it doesn't sound like you can go touring like you were before, but how do you manage that, and what do you do? What does your work life look like?
Yeah. Okay. Well, at the moment, I'm still playing. I do gigs here and there, nowhere near as frequently at the moment, at least. And it's a difficult one to gauge. It's a difficult one to balance because I've had to be more choosy as to the kind of work I do prior to my cancer experience. People can see me play at a pub gig, for example, and I had that life. The last 35 years, I've been carrying my drums and putting them in the car, and you go to the destination, you take them out of the car and set them up and all of that. That's been me for much of my career, for the most part, apart from those more prestigious gigs where you have that luxury where other people are setting up your stuff, and that's nice, though rare. But since my experience, and certainly since having the stoma, I've been told I have to be very careful about lifting heavy gear. So even in the gigs that I've done since, I've had to rely on the kindness of people to carry my stuff for me, because when you have a stoma, it is literally your intestine is through your abdominal wall. So because of that, I'm much more prone to getting a hernia if I lift something the wrong way. So yeah, so the kind of the casual pub gigs and things like that, you very seldom see me doing that kind of thing anymore, unless someone is kind enough to sort of help me with the kit. And in terms of touring, yeah, I've been overseas since. I've played in Latvia recently, and Malta, and a couple of places here and there. In terms of doing an extensive run of dates, that's something I'm feeling a little more confident as each year goes by. I feel a little bit more confident that I can do it. But part of it's not just the physicality, it's the psychology part of it as well, because when the kidneys go, you feel absolutely vulnerable. And then when you're overseas and you're dealing with the whole insurance side of things and the medical, you don't know how good the medical people are wherever you're, whichever town or city you'll be. So it makes you very gun shy and nervous in that respect. So I'm not ruling out the possibility that I'll be back on the horse 100% at some stage. But even 7 years down the line, I'm told that my kidneys are stable, and they have been stable for the past few years. When they flare up, it's really not fun, and it has had quite quite a significant effect on my career on a day-to-day basis. So I'm thinking of ways of continuing my career by staying at home largely, or staying local, or UK wide, or I don't know. I mean, I'm still happy to play overseas, but it has limited things at this moment. Yeah.
How much has drumming been a comfort to you when you've had health challenges? And has your connection to drumming changed at all over the years in that way?
That's a good question. Um, and my answer here will partly answer the question that Gemma asked, which is that yeah. So throughout all of this, bizarrely, all of this has never affected my playing. So even prior to my surgery, in the weeks leading up to that, when I was in a terrible state, the tumor had affected my pace of walking and how I was moving, my tone of voice and everything. And I was losing weight. I didn't know why. My clothes were hanging off me, and I was feeling weak, and I didn't know why. However, I was doing gigs up until a week or so before my surgery. I'd sit down behind the drums, and all of that would go. It never affected how I played. It never affected the intensity or the physicality or any of that aspect of my playing. And it's still the case now. I could do a gig and I play, and nobody would ever know that I've been through going through the experiences that I'm going through. So in terms of the actual playing, it hasn't affected the playing at all. In terms of my connection to music, because it's difficult for me to separate the drumming from the music. So what has kept me buoyant is not so much thinking about drumming, it's thinking about music. So I'd had my AirPods in the hospital. I have very nice. I have a collection of very nice headphones and high-end audiophile grade equipment that I listen to at home. I can't bring that into hospital. Hospital. So in hospital, I have my AirPods and my phone and whatever. So I listen to music whenever I'm in hospital, and then when I'm out of hospital and I'm at home. Even if I'm walking down the street, either I'm listening to music through some device, or I have music swirling around in my head, or I'm reminded of a harmonic sequence that gives me a real buzz, and I replay it in my head all the time, and things like that, and that it does something to the chemicals in my system, the positive chemicals that keep me up. I'm reminded at this point that in the early part before I think it was before my kidney diagnosis, when I became quite ill in late 2019, and my mum visited me every day at home, and neither of us knew quite what it was until I was rushed to hospital. So I was in a bad way. I couldn't eat at all. When your kidneys go, because your kidneys regulate everything, and so when that happens, your appetite goes completely. And with the best will in the world, you can't eat. So mum was trying to make me eat, and she was getting really worried and everything. And I was in a weak state, lying in bed. And then one time we got to speaking about music, and I was talking about one of my favorite musicians, who is a drummer producer by the name of Narada Michael Walden. And we got to talking about him, and I was talking about the Mahavishnu Orchestra and everything, and then it led me to want to play a particular tune to my mum, and so I played this tune, and as this tune was playing, I found myself miming along to every to the groove, and then every feel, and I was pointing out all of the harmonic landscape and whatnot, the does and things like that. And to my mum's amazement, I became physically animated and removed from this really frail, weak person who couldn't eat. And my arms were just going, and I was smiling, and it's just really amazing how, if one is blessed to have that kind of connection and that passion to music, it can do a lot to help soothe whatever you may be going through physically or psychologically, however bad it may be. So I count myself very fortunate that I had the companion of music to sort of help distract me from my situation.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Mike now, because you two seem to have always had a very, very close relationship that was brought about especially with music, with him playing bass. But it seems like he's really, really helped you through, especially the pandemic when you were ill as well. And can you tell us a little bit about your relationship?
Gosh, I am one of 5 siblings. I'm the second of 5. So Mike and I, we have one older sister and two younger sisters. Oh, and we have a half sister in St. Lucia who is older than all of us. So Sophia. But in terms of the 5 of us within that family based in the UK, who our mother and father created. So Mike is the only brother I have. We've always been close because of that brother relationship. He's a year and 2 months younger than I am, so we're pretty close in age in that regard as well. All five of us siblings have a passion for music. It's only Michael and I who became musicians. But I maintain, and I will maintain again, and I'll say this on this platform, that my 3 sisters are more musical than a lot of musicians I know. They really have the ear, and the way that they talk about music. When we were kids, we didn't know what being musicians were, but we try and clumsily find ways of describing what it was about that part of a tune that we really like, where the low part keeps on going down and yet the mid part stays the same, and it makes you feel weird. All three of my sisters have that sense. So with Mike, of course, because we both embarked on the music thing, and in the earlier part of our career, we played a lot more often. We don't play so often now because partly because our reputations have been so established that we've played with so many other musicians. So the Jeff Beck thing was a rarity. Mike's been playing with Billy Cobham for over 30 years, and I've been doing my thing as well, either playing with Julian Joseph or playing with Pee Wee Ellis or Jeff Beck and whoever. In terms of how he's been as a brother, like before the pandemic, during my hospital stay after my major surgery, Michael was here in my flat, preparing it in a way so as it would be stress-free when I got home. So he organized all of these little storage boxes because I have so much stuff here, and not just in terms of drums, but CDs and all kinds of gadgets and electronics and such. And prior to my surgery, the way my living room looked and hallway and everything was just cluttered. And so he came in here and he just cleaned everything up and put everything organized in storage and that. And so he did that. And then as I got home, and he and my siblings would visit on a regular basis. And then when the pandemic came, he, excuse me, because you could only have one person as part of your social bubble.
They call it, yeah.
So Mike was the obvious choice out of my siblings. And so he'd visit me a couple of days a week, maybe 2-3 days a week, especially at the time because I was on the vulnerable list. And for those who are on the vulnerable list, at the very beginning of lockdown, I wasn't allowed out of my flat for 3 whole months. I couldn't even go into my own garden. So I had to stay in for 3 months. So Michael helped me with lots of things in terms of the shopping and in terms of installing shelves and things like that, just making everything a lot more organized and things like that. And so he's been absolutely amazing. And it's further forged whatever bond we've had as siblings has been further forged. As a result of that, he texts me every morning asking me how I am, how I'm feeling with my health and everything. And I mean, without fail, every morning. And we text chat in the day when we can and things like that. And so, I come from a great family of my siblings and my mum, who is 85. She'll be 86 in June, and she's still out there and vibrant and such. And she's been a great support to me as well. And I'm aware of this because through my work, through my experience at Maggie's charity, I've made a lot of friends who are going through the cancer experience, and I've met a few personalities whose family don't support them at all, or they have no family and things like that. So you really have to count your blessings in this regard. So yes, Michael has been great. Yeah.
I want to ask you about ambition. I remember speaking to you a few years ago now about how some people, when they see a great drummer, they're like, right, let's just shove the sticks in the bin. And it seems like you're always walking towards it and going, well,
we had that conversation.
Yes, yeah. Let me do it. Like, if they can, let's see what's going on. And so it strikes me that you have always wanted to just get better, to see how far you can take it on the drums, and not necessarily like a professional, what gig can I get or what stages can I play? I don't want to be putting anything in words in your mouth, but I wanted to know where ambition sits with you now.
Again, that's an intriguing question. In terms of ambition, how I was able to reach the place where I am now, and I don't mean the place in terms of hierarchy or anything like that. Just the fact that after having been plonked behind a set of drums when I was 12 years old at school, and then doing the school shows, and then being poached by other schools to play at their school shows, and throughout all that time, it was a fun thing to do, but I never took it that seriously because I was into visual art I thought I was going to have a career to do with visual art at the time, but I got the bug. I really got the bug when I was maybe 15 or 16. And I had this ambition of wanting to be out there playing. But funnily enough, back then, I wasn't even thinking about a career. It's kind of weird. I wasn't thinking about it in terms of a career, in terms of being paid and making a living as a musician. And I never had a plan, because it wasn't in my universe at the time. I hadn't met up with other drummers, for example. I hadn't met up with other aspiring musicians, so I knew nothing about this thing, about networking and oh, I'm in this particular space now. How do I get to the next space, and how do I meet up with this person and get to meet blah blah? I had none of that. I just put my head down and listened to my favorite music and tried to cop all of the sounds and phrases that I enjoyed, and I tried to reproduce those sounds. And it was other people who saw me and grabbed me from that particular situation I was in. I was playing in back then when I was in school. I was in the Tower Hamlets schools band, which was a brass and woodwind band. And then I got poached from that to do the Tower Hamlets youth band, which was an evening session with adults as well as kids. So that was kind of like an upgrade in a sense. And then from there, I was poached to do a jazz big band session in Southgate, which was a fair distance from us. And so I started doing that on a Wednesday. And then that led to a guy by the name of Charles Alexander. He noticed myself and Michael, and there was an upcoming Jamie Abersold jazz course that was happening at Goldsmiths College in the summer of 1984. He put us forward. He gave us a free scholarship to go and attend this. And so before I know it, I'm rubbing shoulders with legends like Hal Cowper and Slide Hampton, and all of these jazz greats teaching, and I really lapped that up and enjoyed that. And then after that, we were recommended to go to the Weekend Arts Centre, which at the time was in Kentish Town, and they had a music workshop, which was kind of like it was a fusion workshop. It was kind of like a jazz and fusion workshop, which Ian Carr led on a Sunday afternoon from 3 until 6. And we started to attend there. And then through a mutual friend of Julian Joseph, who was studying there, he told us about Julian Joseph and told Julian about us. And then one Sunday, Julian showed up. We met for the first time, we played for the first time, and we just clicked. And then it was Julian who brought down Steve Williamson and Courtney Pine and all these other personalities, young personalities who were coming up at the same time. And we got together and we formed our own scene, which was totally separate from what was the usual Nigel youth jazz scene, which was a very different. It was kind of big band led and very much of a certain thing. And you had to be schooled to a certain degree because you had to be able to sight read well and things like that. We were into a different thing. We were more into Coltrane and Elvin Jones and Jack DeJohnette and I was already heavily into the fusion thing. So it was Julian and Courtney that got me more into the straight ahead things. So that was another world that opened me up. And as soon as I was learning about the straight ahead, I was like, oh, that's where Lenny White gets this from. That's where Billy Cobham gets this from, and it further strengthened my foundation and understanding of the instrument. So I've never been ambitious in that sense, because I never had a roadmap in the same way that a lot of people that I witness, a lot of people, they seem to have that roadmap, and it's like that whole schmoozing thing, which I never did, and I still don't do, because I have a stammer. I physically don't have the ability to walk up to someone and kind of start to verbally network, and that I just stay quiet, I do my thing, and other people see me and suggest that I do this. They suggested Louise King from Rhythm. I did the Glenn Hughes tour through her, because she thought it would be a nice idea that I do that. Whatever. I did the Jethro Tull thing because I met with Ian Anderson's son when I was doing a wine bar gig with the All Stars in St. Paul's one time, and someone introduced me to Ian Anderson's son, who was his manager at the time as well, and so he was also playing. He was standing in for their usual drummer, because Doan was having a lot of surgery at the time, surgery on his rotator cuffs and on his feet and that. And so Ian's son said, "Would you be up for doing a few gigs?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then next thing, I'm meeting up with Ian Anderson and rehearsing at his place, and then we're doing, and I spent most of 2009 playing with his solo band, with being Ian Anderson, the Ian Anderson band, and but in that capacity, I ended up doing five legitimate Jethro Tull gigs at festivals in Armenia and Lebanon and the Netherlands as well, and a couple of UK festivals and things like that. And I had no plan, and I still have no plan, except the closest I have to having a plan now is that I need to figure out ways. I need to clarify how I want to get the teaching side of things happening, because I'm still sort of not sure as to how, the best way to go about it. And of course, there's the whole YouTube thing and things like that. I have so many options, but it's about how to start it, or whether to start it, and things like that. But yeah, all of these fantastic opportunities I've had haven't come about through hustling. It's come about through just enjoying what I do, and other people have put me in these fantastic situations.
I would like to tell a little story from about 25 years ago, and it touches on something you were just talking about. So I went to my Saturday job in a bookshop in Swindon, and
I remember that.
One day a group of people came into the shop, and I think it was you. It might have been Beck, but I think it was you who said to me, "Hello, I wondered if some people from my group could come and speak to you." And I had such a shock, because I think I had seen you and Mike maybe do a masterclass like 2 years before or something, maybe even more recent than that. But I thought, hang on a second, this is Mark and Mike. Like, why are they here? And why are they talking to me? I felt like I was dreaming. And it turned out that you were a mentor you and Mike were both mentoring for people with stammers. And so, you can imagine my shock that I had. Right. But can you tell me about that? Do you still do that work now, or is it sort of something that you've moved on from? It sounds like you're now busy with Maggie's and
so back then, myself and Mike, we were we attended a fantastic speech therapy called the Maguire program, and the time that we met with you at the bookshop, we had become primary coaches, because once you graduate, once you do the course, and then once you graduate from the course, you have the option. It's not compulsory. You have the option to become a primary primary coach. Yeah. So very often people who have gone through the course, they come back to help support and coach the people who are the new students who are currently going through the course. And part of what that involves is we're designated a group of a few people, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 students, and we go to the town centre, and we either do disclosures, which is that we approach strangers on the street and we make a disclosure, which is that we state our name. So I would say, my name is Mark, and I'm here because I'm involved in this fantastic speech therapy called the Maguire program. Part of my training is to get over the fear of approaching strangers, and not to avoid speaking situations. So I'm introducing myself and blah blah blah. And like 99% of the time, the response you get is very positive. On occasion, you get the odd person who's a bit weird and whatever. But it's a really great way of showing the students that the world out there isn't as scary as it can be perceived. So when we walked into the bookshop, that was why we were there. And then I vaguely recall you saying to me and Michael that that you know us and that you play the drums. And it was then that I vaguely remembered you, but my memory of gigs and venues and meeting people is shockingly bad. But when you mentioned it, I was like, oh right, okay, that's weird. No, so so I'm no longer involved with the Maguire program in that capacity. Haven't been for quite a while, but I still use the technique when I can, and I tell people about it. Like many graduates, they continue to tell people about the Maguire program and how it has helped us and such. But much of my time in terms of doing that kind of thing, that kind of capacity, most of that time has been funneled into Maggie's now. And it's such a weird one, because as Wes Streeting, who I met yesterday morning, and he's a cancer survivor himself, and he was saying what we all tend to say quite a bit, which is that we are members of a club nobody wants to be a member of. And so that's a really true statement. However, being a member of this particular group, it affords you such an insight into things. And it's kind of it's put me in a situation where I'm helping and inspiring other people, and I've been there for people in their darkest moments as well. There's one person I think of in particular, and I smile at that at this point. I was hospitalised a few years ago, and I was back at West Middlesex Hospital, and the staff there know me because I go back there so many times. They know me now. And so I was speaking to one of the nurses came up I hadn't seen in a while, and we got into this conversation, and she was asking how I was, and I was talking about how I'm coping, and talking about my stoma and that, and saying how and I have quite a positive spin on it. And unbeknownst to me, there was a guy in the ward lying in bed, and his wife was visiting him at the time. They overheard my conversation, and I was called over to speak to this couple later on, because this guy, he told me that when he came in here, he just had his surgery and everything, and he was in a really, really dark place. Then he overheard my conversation and heard my attitude and was able to feel how positive I was, and it snapped him out of it. And like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, we meet up on occasion, and he invites me to his golf club, and we have breakfast and we have a laugh, and we have become really good friends. And I've made lots of friends like that. So it feels like a privilege and honor to have been. I've been thrust into this situation now. My life has been changed forever, but in many ways in a positive way, because now I have the capacity to be there, to listen to people and to impart my advice based on my experience. I can only speak from my experience and be as honest as I can in that, and people have found that to be quite inspiring.
With that in mind, on social media, you get like people just chasing, fast fills and trying to be like, hey, check me out.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could speak to like every young drummer, what would you say to them in terms of drums, or maybe just an insight to life? Are they what? I feel like they're missing the point, but I want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, again, similar to my cancer experience, I can only speak from my personal experience. It often happens it's by dint of the nature of the drums being what they are. They are a physical instrument. They can look quite impressive and flashy when you play, and when one plays and whatever. And so oftentimes when I'm doing a gig, no matter what the genre is, but mostly if it's in the more jazz and creative, expressive kind of genres like jazz and fusion and things like that, and inevitably I'm always going to get the comment or compliment about how fast my hands are and my feet and whatever, and my technique, and especially how I tend to look relaxed, but all of this stuff is happening, but then I at the same time I can remain quite relaxed. So I get questions regarding technique, and I tell people the technique came as a byproduct of wanting to make music, and it's all about music. And I agree with you. I have to agree with you, and I do say at risk of sounding like an old fart, but I don't care, because facts are facts. Facts are facts. It's very easy and it's very understandable, and I'm not here to demonize such people. So this is why I say it's very understandable. I can understand the appeal of wanting to have that level of physicality. These days, for me, a lot of that leaves me absolutely cold, because with respect to that genre of what they call the gospel chops and things like that, but I discover one drummer after another, and for the most part I'm checking out this person for the first time, and then they do this thing, and musically, melodically and musically, all I hear is you know, and hand and foot combinations, and this thing about crossing your arms between the floor tom and the hi-hat, where for me it's like, well, why not just do this? It's a lot easier. I mean, but they do it because it looks impressive, and and I can understand. You want to, you want to express your feathers and all of that, and that's fine. But for me, it's like the reason for example, people could look at me and they might think, oh, he's showing off a bit because he's playing he's playing right cymbal with his left hand as well, and blah blah. And it's like, no, it's not about showing off. I just happen to be left-handed. I was plonked behind a right-handed kit. I just happen to have the ability to ride with my right if I want to, and put a different sounding ride cymbal musically for musical reasons on my left side. And so if I want to play that cymbal, it's easier for me to play it like this and to play it like that. It's just everything that I've developed has come from wanting to produce music. And I learned by listening to lots of vinyl records and recordings and such, in an age where I couldn't see what people were doing. So all of that YouTube stuff hadn't existed at the time. So I was learning a lot of Billy Cobham phrases and Lenny White phrases, but I was playing them right hand crossed over the left, and then trying to figure out how they did stuff. And then when I saw them play, and they saw they playing open-handed, I relearned everything. And it's like, oh, no wonder Billy Cobham was able to do this fill. And then he play on an offbeat. He plays cymbal crash on the offbeat, and he's immediate. I hear the hi-hat immediately. I'm like, how does he do that? Like, no, it's not this. It's this. No, so yeah, so you kind of just learn bit by bit by bit by bit. And I said my maxim is to follow the music. Follow the music. Get into the music. If you have a favorite player and they're playing, you're listening to a track that they are performing on, rather than trying to cop that lick, ask yourself what made him or her go to that part of the kit at that point in the music. What was happening? What were they listening to inspire them to play that cymbal or to do a 5-stroke roll at that point? And in that way, you get into the psychology of your favorite players, and you learn that language. And that way, your phrasing tends to open up, rather than you're kind of trying to do this. What's that? What they do in art, where they take something and they paste it on to a certain thing. So people tend to, they garner a whole load of licks, and it's as if they have a kit bag full of licks and they're waiting for the right moment where they can use it. And it's like, no, you got it the wrong way round. You need to get into the music, and then you find that you'll be coming up with your own licks and your own phrases, and then you'll have people asking you, how did you come up with that? And it's like, because I'm communicating with the music. And that's what it is.
Preach. I love it.
Well, yeah.
I have a final question for you. Do you have any mental, spiritual, or daily practices that help keep you grounded or in a positive headspace?
I don't have any particular mantra. I have no affiliation to any religion, or I mean, they call it faith, but I'm going to be a bit cheeky here and say such faith, such religions, they don't own the copyright on the word faith. I have a lot of faith, and I don't follow any religion as such. And I'll get off my soapbox now. No, I don't adopt any kind of specific mantra or series of words, or kind of anywhere that I feel that I plug into for inspiration, aside from just living my everyday experience. Or rather, I tend to tell people it's not every day, it's every moment. And if I plug into anything, it's always been this thing of music. I've always found a way of plugging into that. And I don't know quite how it works, but I've always had this thing since I was a little child, where music would come over the speakers, and there'd be something in that song or something in that music, not necessarily in the lyrics, because I still now, which, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, or maybe even a bad thing. But I very seldom pay attention to the lyrics of a piece of music. I was always drawn towards the actual music. So there's all these classic Motown songs and kind of stack songs and things that I was raised on. And I used to really like that song. And for all I know, they could be singing about the worst kind of like politically incorrect stuff. I was completely oblivious, because I liked that lead up to the chorus, where there's a certain chord that kind of introduces that next chord. Or there's a tune by the Spinners called Rubber Band Man. And if you check out this tune, it's like it's in one key on the verse, and when it gets to the chorus, the link between the verse and the chorus, it's kind of almost like a 2/5 chord sequence thing, and then it goes into this lower key, and it's and it really gives you this sort of weird buzz, and it's things like that. So I'm just thankful that there's something in the inner ear, or it's part of my soul, that has me listen to a piece of music, and I don't choose what music I like. It just, the music tends to grab me. So and as I said, during my worst times in my hospital visits and things like that, I find that listening to music or thinking about music that moves me, it tends to keep me afloat. So no particular doctrine or whatever am I inspired by, or kind of I'm pretty much a free agent.
You've always been, ever since I met you in that bookshop, someone who's just really, you're so positive, it just kind of flows out of you, and that's never changed. So I think it's lovely to
Thank
see.
you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and your stories and your energy.
Thanks, ladies.
And everything. Thank you so much for listening. As always, we really and truly appreciate it. If you like this episode, please do feel free to leave us a positive review, as it will help other people find us too. Until next time, take care.